Morning, folks. Will, just in time. Time for the story again. We're at the end of book one, chapter 10, so let's get on it, okay? If you haven't been keeping up with the movie, check my playlist. Catch up to now. It'll be well worth your time. Name of the book is Survivor. It's by Angela White. It's about recuperating after a nuclear attack, how the United States puts itself back together. All right, let's get started. Angela sucked air into the lungs that burned from holding her breath. She'd won. She was free. Her scream of triumph echoed as they finally fled. More confident now that she had another defense to depend on, flames and ice and fire and brimstone. How fitting. Angela moved towards her blazer, reasonably sure Warren wouldn't die, and content that the others wouldn't follow her, even if they wanted them to. If he came for her later, it would be only him and maybe Aaron. 2 against 1 is much better odds, she thought. Above fate laughed. Angela pulled the blazer's door shut as Warren vanished behind the thick, rolling, black, billowing smoke from the burning truck. His faint outline was gone. The witch retreated fully to allow Angela an untainted view of the empty home prison cell that she had lived in for the last 14 years. All she felt was relief. She was finally free and wouldn't wait for another second to go. Locking the doors, Angela pushed the wall of grief and guilt away as she stared at the tiny grave. Shadows darted and smoke rolled as she started the engine and shifted into drive. She felt sad and excited, but mostly scared, even with the gun at her side. Her kind was not meant to be alone. With the last sigh of misery and excitement, she pulled her sunglasses over her teary eyes and drove away. Empty and full mailboxes waved at a final hard goodbye into her mirror. Book 2. It was a long day for Angela. The slow going made her grit her teeth in frustration and then curse aloud as she spent the entire morning creeping west. She squeezed through wherever she could, gently pushing doghouses, a dumpster, furniture, and cars aside, and it pained her to see the whole block still decorated for the holiday. The pavement everywhere was cracked, full of weeds and potholes, and she found herself listening for the hit that would give her her first flat tire of her journey. She began to ease through muddy yards to avoid the glass that littered the streets, and then berated herself for only making 2 miles in 4 hours. More than once she found her way completely blocked and had to drive through fences, wincing at every snap of wood, plastic, and bone. Angela felt too exposed as she traveled through the riot-ravaged areas that she had known before the war. Everything was so different, so dangerous, that she would never have recognized the towns if she had not been there before. Doubts about her ability to make the trip hit her hardest as she passed through Cheviot, Ohio. It scared her, shook her up more than dealing with Warren, and her dreams were filled with it, and she finally slept. Angela tried to steel herself as she entered the city limits, assuming it would be as bad as her own neighborhood, but it was worse. She cried as she drove, tears blurring the awful scene, but not enough with it that she finally slept. Half of the buildings were gone, burned down to charred, blackened frames. Those that did not remain had no windows, no doors. The main street was crammed with abandoned cars and wrecks, but the corpses made her heart ache. There were so many. Had no one in this small city found her safety? Angela wiped as her face, steering carefully around the blackened shell of Army transport truck, the driver's uniform body still rotting inside. She sucked in a horrified breath as she cleared the vehicle, now able to see what remained of the small municipal building. Only the tall pillars still stood, the wide field of rubble behind it unrecognizable, and the tears came harder at the sight of so many who had represented authority decaying on those charred steps. Police, soldiers, and citizens lay in a tangled heap. The scene was gruesome. Fishtailing suddenly on the ice, Angela hit the brakes too sharply and slid into the slushy street. Her front tires slammed into the curb hard enough to throw her against the seat, and the scare allowed her to get control of herself. She wiped her eyes again, concentrating on the quiet rumble of her engine, and after a moment she felt better. She started to reverse, but something changed in the air suddenly. It was different, and she turned off the heater to listen as she swept the area intently. She heard something. Not a threat, the witch informed her, settling back, just more starving people. They were close, watching. Angela could feel it, and she put the blazer in park. She climbed into the rear seat, ignoring the greed inside that was insisting that she couldn't spare anything. Yes, she can. A few minutes later, she gently dropped 2 bags out the open window and then got moving again, hoping it would help. She had included a note with a list of stores that still had non-perishable food left, but in her heart she knew she had only delayed the inevitable, and she hated the guilt she was feeling for leaving them there to die. But they can search the stores. The old Angela didn't understand. Why will they die? Because they're cheap, the witch answered. Sleepily, without a shepherd, they will stay out in the cold and freeze to death. They've lost their strength. Those who cannot find hope will not survive. Those words pulled at Angela, echoed in her bitter heart. Kenny had obviously found his reason to fight. Charlie's dreams were full of the people they'd joined. She knew they were going to Montana, and it made her stomach burn to wonder what kind of sorry bastard was in charge of her child. She didn't trust Kenny's judgment at all, and she paid little attention to her son's inexperienced impressions. No one Ken approved of could be good. Being curious, Angela drove slowly past long gravel driveways surrounded with pine trees and knee-high shrubs gone wild from the lack of care. The houses on the outskirts gave her no comfort as she left the ghost town behind. They were sprawling beasts with paint-chipped porches and untended lawns, their fields ready to be planted. Their 2-car garages would likely hold one white or red Ford Crown Victoria and one a midnight blue 1966 Starfire, or some other unknown treasure that would now wait forever for its owner to lovingly restore it. The most common hobby in this area. There were no signs of normal life, or any other life for that matter. Angela took her first break around 4, pulling up behind a faded billboard that warned Buzz driving was still drunk driving, and she smirked at the irony as she lit a joint. It didn't matter now, probably hadn't before, as much as the government had made out of it. Likely every plant in nature, marijuana had its purpose. Right now, it was keeping her calm, steadying her resolve, and she was glad she'd found the big garbage bag in one of the neighbors' apartments. She was terrified, but there was no way she couldn't ever turn back and live with herself. Knew it for sure as she sat on the warm hood, sweater pulled tight. Her firstborn son was out here somewhere in this hell, and she would find him or die trying. Book 3. Angela made camp at her first night in an unturned cornfield lined with patches of black ice and small, dirty snowdrifts. It was about a half-mile from the jammed-up lanes of the Interstate 74. The brown, brittle stalks didn't quite come up to the roof, but when she threw a wide, dark tarp over the top of the car, scattering slushy snow on it, the vehicle blended in. She immediately felt better as darkness rolled over the broken land. Angela went to the area and she had driven through, straightening rows until the path was normal again. Gaze darting nervously at every small sound and shift of the shadows. She didn't detect any insects or any other wildlife, not even the ants crawling over the dirt as she set up camp. She did hear a robin, but was unable to pinpoint its location by the weak call. Things were no better here than what she'd left behind. Only getting out what she needed for dinner, Angela moved quickly and quietly, listening hard. Nursing a smashed thumb and a sore finger that she'd pulled a large splinter from after making her fire and hanging the tarp. Nailing things and lighting them up were what her marine was good for. She left her rear hatch open, with the ends of the wide tarp hanging down to the ground. She was almost completely shielded from the road. The sandwiches were gone quickly as with the light, and she sat on the tailgate, surrounded by pillows, sipping a hot cup of chamomile and relaxing. The warm heater pushed back a little of the loneliness, and she drank her tea and watching the last of the vivid green sunset. She hadn't heard anyone in the CB, just gunshots in the distance that made her drive faster. She hadn't expected to, but not seeing any people, at least not any alive, had bothered her too. When she filled in a page on her journal from now on, she would include how many people she saw on the way and what each town was like. She wasn't sure why she wanted to do it, but instinct said she should, and so she would. In this new world, instincts were the defense she had to be used. Though she'd only come 8 miles, it was a start, enough to drive it home that once she found Charlie, there would be a price to pay for leaving. Her man had made it clear he wanted her to stay and wait for him no matter what. Until the war, she had never even considered disobeying Kenny. They had a deal, and he got mean when she broke the rules. He wouldn't be pissed about her leaving, but about her calling Mark. Kenny would be furious and blood would be spilled, likely hers, and Kenny would never believe anything that she offered as an explanation, and she would have to warn Mark that it might come down to real violence. It was only fair he knew what he was getting into. Where was he now? You can open the door, the witch tried to seduce, but Angie didn't. Not because it was wrong, but because a part of her was too excited. Couldn't wait to see him again. What if she still had feelings? Not only would it complicate everything, but it would also be a mortal sin to long for one man while still firmly attached to another. Angela told herself she was eager because it meant getting to her son and was finally able to sleep. Her dreams were not easy, though she was haunted with visions of her son, gone forever, and her being left to spend eternity searching for new American wastelands for him. Morning's arrival was just a relief. All right, into chapter 10. We're going to stop there for today. And next week we'll be starting chapter 11. It will be called Dangerous Secrets, and it will be starting on February 10th. So now Angie is out looking for her son, and she'll do anything to find him. If anybody out there is a mother, they know how important that is to always know where your children are. All right, you guys, that's it for today. Don't forget we have the live stream in the morning. We're going to be giving away Ron Neitzel's book on Saturday, so you want to make sure that you come to the live stream in the morning. Get your name on the list for Saturday. All right, you guys, I really want to thank you guys for sticking around and listening to my book that I do every Tuesday. It really does me a lot of good. This book here could actually prepare you for what would happen if something serious was to happen in our country. So pay attention to the little details, because the little details are the things that could just save your life someday. All right, you guys. You guys know I love you. I can't do any of this stuff without you. And as usual, it's God bless you. God bless me. God bless USA. Thanks for watching. I'll see you out there.